Do you desire a place to get away? How about 3? You truly belong here among the clouds on Bespin, the first stop on your Star Tours getaway package. Stay and play in the clouds and enjoy the spectacular Galaxy in the Skies fireworks pageant every single night. The fun continues on the forest moon of Endor, where you'll sleep under the stars with the lovable Ewoks in their charming tribal villages. Your third stop brings you to the peaceful world of Alderaan, where you can relax in a natural wonderland, recently voted safest planet in the galaxy by Hyperspace Traveler. This Star Tours getaway package is 3 times the fun in one, so ask your travel consultant to book yours today.
Hello everyone and welcome once again to Geekfest Rants. Today we're going to be talking about the new Star Tours ride. Apparently they've refurbished it and added some new features to it, and a couple of our friends have gone to it and they're here to tell us a little bit about it. Joining us today is Brian, Steve, and Brenda. Say hi, guys.
Hi.
Hello.
Thanks for having me.
Guys, first tell me about the original ride. Where did this whole Star Tours thing start? And what park did it start? And what did it do originally?
Well, I believe the ride originated in Disneyland, California, in Tomorrowland, and George Lucas was very involved, obviously, since it was Star Wars related. And the original storyline is that you're going on a shuttle tour to different places that are relevant to the Star Wars canon. You can go to Endor, you can go to Hoth, all kinds of different places. So what would happen is you would walk into the ride and the queue would be set up almost like a bus station where you would see different films previewing the lands that you could possibly visit on Star Tours. And they also had a replica of the shuttle itself on the queue, and C-3PO was there talking to R2-D2, who goes along for the ride. And then once you get on the actual ride, it's piloted by a character named Rex. And Rex is a robot. Apparently he's in training. And he's just going to be taking us to whatever destination. We're not really sure where we're going. And he winds up having some issues. And we get thrown into the midst of some space battles. And ultimately we wind up in the trench scene at the Death Star from A New Hope. And we're being attacked by different TIE fighters, and we're now involved with helping to destroy the Death Star, and then you return back, and that's essentially the storyline.
Now, from what I understand, this isn't just using the name of Star Wars or Lucasfilm trademark. They actually shot it through ILM. It's actually a Lucas-produced film that is used for this ride.
That's correct. Everything was done from scratch for this particular ride, so that it would match the motion simulator that you're riding in.
Right.
And, you know, it was fun. Anyone who's seen the first Star Wars film or Episode 4, that particular scene at the end, wondering what it would be like to do that. And even when you watch the film, you kind of get that sensation that I'm actually in the trench. Well, when you combine that with a motion simulator, it really makes it believable.
And for it being the original films, they combine a little bit of New Hope, the trench battle, and at the end, it's kind of like Return of the Jedi Death Star surface battle. They combine those two elements into one film.
Yes.
Now, the other thing, from what I understand, originally it was supposed to be the type of ride that would eventually, maybe, I don't know if yearly or every couple of years, they could update it. They could add more elements to it so that it was somewhat new, not as new as it is now, but it would be somewhat new for visitors who are going through it, and it would get a different experience all the time.
Right.
But that never worked out originally.
No, and apparently they did start shooting some new footage and working on some new effects for it. And this is around the time of when the prequels were being worked on, and
the late 90s.
Yeah, and they put it on hold because what they wanted to do is they wanted to wait until they completed all 3 of the prequels,
right,
and then do something completely different. You know, Lucas, the mindset is, well, let's have access to all of this different footage and figure out what kind of story we're going to tell, and hence the long delay. I mean, they had shot that footage probably quite a while ago. I think during Phantom Menace.
They did pod race stuff right after Phantom Menace came out.
Wow.
So 10 years ago, and then they ultimately decided to hold. I think George basically just told them, why don't you guys just wait Let's get all the films out of the way. We'll have all these various other places that the audience has never seen yet.
And then they can pick.
And then we can make a huge, big, something of a much larger scale. Basically.
Now, Brenda, do you know, from what I understand, there are other involvements between Lucasfilm and Disney, not just Star Tours, the old Star Tours. What are the other rides that are associated with Lucasfilm?
Well, you have the Indiana Jones ride in California,
Okay.
Temple of the Forbidden Eye, and then you have...
Now, that's more like a roller coaster-y type of ride, right?
You get into a vehicle that takes you on an adventure. You're following along with an Indiana Jones character.
It's a group ride. So you're in this car that moves through different settings, but it's also on its own gimbal. So
Okay.
it feels like you're actually in a Jeep that's driving through these different scenarios.
And what's the Florida Indiana Jones ride? Yeah,
It's the Indiana Jones stunt show.
Right.
Right, and that's...
Which is not really a ride. It's more of a
theater
presentation.
experience.
Right.
You go down, you sit down in a very large audience. It's actually a very popular destination because it's a shaded spot.
And you get a lot of people
and
in one shot.
you can fit a lot of
Yeah.
people in that. And the one thing about that stunt show, it basically recreates several events that happened during Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Okay.
Including his initial retrieval of that
idol.
the boulder following
Uh-huh,
after him, and then it goes into the market scene where Marion gets kidnapped, and they do a whole stunt scene there, and then they do the whole sequence in the airplane exploding with the bald-headed
the wing, the flying
Nazi.
wing. Right.
But I have to say that in the past I have experienced twice where they had to stop the show because there was a problem with the
Really?
explosives.
And it wasn't part of the show.
And they had to stop because they couldn't get the explosive part to work
Oh,
at the
wow.
very end for the finale. So they had to stop the show and tell everybody to go home. So it was kind of, unless you've seen the whole thing, it's
Yeah.
disappointing when you can't see
You don't realize that they
Yeah.
actually made a mistake. What's the other Lucasfilm involvement ride that we have been talking about also?
Captain EO has been brought back.
The old Captain EO.
Yes, back in the 80s, George Lucas, Francis Ford Coppola collaborated with Disney to create this 3D Michael Jackson video
Right.
song and dance with a mixture of alien.
Angelica Houston, I believe, was involved in that
Right.
too. She played like the evil queen or something.
But that disappeared for a long time
Uh-huh.
because they had been utilizing the Rick Moranis Honey, I Shrunk the
That's
Audience. This is in the World of Imagination in Epcot we're talking
But
about.
they brought it back recently as in honor of, I guess,
After Michael Jackson
Jackson's,
being...
passed away.
Right.
They brought it back for that.
I just wanted to point out two things. One, I think one of the reasons they took it away originally is because Michael was having all the trouble he was having involving young children. And I think Disney probably didn't want to be associated with it. And two, I think that Captain EO cost like $45 or $50 million to make.
It had a
And it's
huge-
only 10 minutes
Yeah,
long. I mean,
it was very
it's
it
an
was a huge
absurdly
budget.
expensive movie. It's cool that it's back. It's fantastic. And it shows Michael in his prime.
So there is a definite history of Lucasfilm involvement. Now, moving to the future now, what's happened is they finally got around to updating the Star Tours ride. Tell me what you guys remember from your current Disney trip. How has the ride changed, and how is it more or a little more interactive now?
Well, first I want to say that Steve and I, as a family, have been going to Star Wars weekends for a couple of years now. And it's, one thing to be a fan of Star Wars when you're a kid, but it's even better when you're a fan of Star Wars and you marry a fan of Star Wars, and then you end up having kids, and then the kids are into Star Wars, and then you can all experience this together because it gives it a whole different vibe. So we have 3 kids, one of which you probably hear in the background, who's a year and a half and wearing her Princess Leia onesie, that are, being thrown into this environment. And so we went for the launch of this new ride, the new Star Tours.
Which was closed for about a year, correct?
Yes.
For the renovations.
Actually, they closed it in September after Celebration.
Right, after Celebration 5,
and
right.
opened it May.
Middle of May, yeah.
So tell me, how has it changed?
Well, I think I was the first one out of the group to ride it.
Yes, we had a challenge, a bet, and you won the bet, and I said whoever wins the bet gets to ride Star Tours with the kids first.
And I won the bet. So they updated the queue area, gave it a fresh coat of paint, kind of spruced it up a bit. They also changed all of the films, all the preview destination films that you see.
The big board is very different where all the destinations are listed, and there's a lot of visual effects. And what's that imperial language that they call?
Basic?
Basic, yeah. It's listed half the time in Basic and then half the time in English. Like, they added little Easter eggs for Star Wars fans, I think, there, right?
Absolutely. They changed some of the banter between C-3PO and R2-D2. They're still in the queue area with the actual Star Speeder that you ride in.
Yeah.
And they changed the coloring of that. I think now it's orange.
There's an orange hue to it.
It used to be blue.
But it's the same physical looking ship.
Physical ship.
Okay.
Yep. And then as you progress, they have other areas to help accentuate the feeling of being in a space station. They have these silhouettes up on the walls where you can recognize travelers walking back and forth, and then every now and again you'll see a very recognizable character like a Darth Vader or like a Yoda, or you'll see Boba Fett's silhouette go by. So again, they have these little winks and nods to all the fans as you make your way through the line. And then they also have somewhat of a graveyard of droids. I think they have R5 is there, and they also have
from the previous ride.
Well, Rex, the previous captain of the Star Speeder and the former incarnation of the ride, he's there as well. So that's another nod to the history behind the ride. But then once you get to the
loading area,
the loading area, they changed the film. It used to be a gal with some crazy Guinan-like hairdo.
Half Princess Leia. She had the bun on one side.
Exactly. She had a curly bun on one side. Now they've gone with a CGI character.
There's one other thing I wanted to mention in the queue line. When you're walking through now, there's a droid that sits there talking to you. He's like I guess the director of security. So as you're walking through, you see an outline of yourself on a monitor walking past. So it's like almost like you're being scanned, and the droid's like telling, move quickly, let's go. So that's a little bit of an interactive thing that wasn't there before. You actually see yourself a little bit involved in the queue before you get on the ride.
They did a really good job with it, because I had heard that they were just going to kind of change the color of the Star Speeder and just update some of the stuff that they had there. But I thought that they took it to a higher level with that type of interactivity.
So you're waiting on the loading dock and you're watching the film.
Can I just also mention, though, I have to say I was a little bit disappointed in that factor, meaning that you've waited all this time for a refurbishment, and if you've already been on Star Tours, if you're going to wait on that long line, that long queue, you're going to be looking at a lot of the stuff that you've already seen, meaning like, yes, everything that the guys have pointed out is all true and it's all cool, but you are not going to be blown away. Like, you're not going to be walking into a totally different experience. It's pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, but it's a queue, and it's really about the ride. Right. And the ride does blow you away, you have to admit.
So tell me, what happens? How do you get into the ship? Is it like it used to be before?
So you get in, and everybody sits down, and prior to that, you're given 3D glasses. So that's a new element to this ride. It's now in 3D. So everybody sits down, and you're given a little preview of what you need to do. Everybody has to buckle their safety belts and blah blah blah. This is the ride attendant comes over and tells you how to get situated with your seatbelt, and then they close the doors and the ride begins.
Actually, that's one of my favorite parts, is watching how to put your storage stuff below your seat and put your seatbelt on.
Is that new too?
That got revamped. Yes.
Now, but is the inside of the ship any different or the same? That hasn't been changed at all?
No, it's pretty much the same. But there is one thing that's different in the ship itself when the window opens.
Well, when the window opens, instead of Rex, our pilot is C-3PO.
Okay, right. He's the pilot.
And he is now communicating to R2, who was always the droid, riding along with us, but now they have this banter that goes on.
Now, have they also changed the actual monitor where they project the... is it a monitor or projector, or is it still the same? Because I heard it was kind of newish.
It's a huge HD display.
Before
it's
it
one
looked
of the biggest
more like
ones
a
I've ever seen.
projector type of setup.
Yeah, no, it's HD now.
Okay.
Easily one of the biggest non-stadium HD sets I've ever seen. It's big.
Cool.
I don't even know if it's standard HD or if it's like 4K. It may even be like a higher resolution.
The older one, I believe, obviously it was film, but it was also very grainy and very...
It was old.
It looked old.
It was actually a product of the late 80s, and it looked it.
It physically looked old, even though I'm sure you weren't watching a print off of a projector, but it just looked old for some reason.
And now I think they just run them off a server.
Probably,
yeah. So you have the door drops or the partition drops, and you see C-3PO is right there with you. And then on the other side, flanking the monitor itself, is a screen, and R2-D2 pops up. So you can see them talking to each other back and forth. So you see R2's on the screen, and you have 3PO's actually in the shuttle with you. And then what happens is the ride begins. And the way that the updated ride is being publicized is that there are a number of different variations to the ride.
54, some ridiculous number. That's
54
amazing.
Different variables that you could possibly experience. Now, that doesn't mean that there are 54 major changes in the ride.
Right.
There are
It's
there are different
combinations.
levels, different combinations. It's essentially any one of those 54 variables could be in the mix with your ride. It doesn't guarantee that you might not get a very similar ride if you were to ride it multiple times, but the odds are that you would get something that at least was a bit different.
What are the major themes you guys saw?
Well, I also wanted to point out, though, for anybody who's listening who's a parent of a small child who's going to get on this ride, my son, who's a huge Star Wars fan, he's 4, he was terrified of, in fact, he's even threatening that he won't go on it again because there's this part where a droid, or what do you call it, is some sort of...
When the ride begins, there's a blast shield down on the front of the Star Speeder.
Okay.
The blast shield raises up, and you start getting fired upon by stormtroopers. It turns out that where we are, apparently there are Imperial forces looking for someone.
Like a loading dock, or
yeah, exactly.
You're not in space yet.
No, you're not in space. You're in a huge loading bay. And again, this also happened in the previous film, but this time they really took it over the top in that it's a gigantic loading bay. So you can see multiple ships flying around. So what Brenda's referring to is the battle droids come out.
Oh.
And they start firing, and there's also
it's like a probe droid.
It's a
lands on the windshield.
It looks like a spider.
Oh, that tries to cut into
It's a spider droid that pops onto the windshield.
Okay.
And it starts scanning inside the Star Speeder itself. And what it
there's an
does
effect
is
inside?
There's a red laser that scans the whole audience.
so it scans the audience, and then this is part of the ride is that it says there is a rebel spy on this Star Speeder, and what it does is it shows us, the audience, on the screen who the rebel spy is. So it's any one of the ride participants at that point in time.
That's a cool little interactive
Very cool
aspect
but,
to it.
To Brenda's point, our 4-year-old son was a little freaked out because and it's in 3D, so it looks like the thing is actually shooting a laser right past your
It
head.
has that effect of yeah, okay.
So it's a little intense. But
It's very funny, though, because it could be like Grandma Smith sitting next to you as the rebel spy, so it's actually very cute. It's very funny.
But in any event, so when you do finally, you take off, you leave because they're firing on you and you want to get out of there. But there's a little bit of interactivity at that moment as well. That would be one of the variables, right? Where you see who is firing upon you. You can be attacked by different people, whether it's a stormtrooper or there might be some people who are affiliated with the Rebel Alliance.
So
there.
already the different combinations are already in effect.
Right, but the big changes happen when they still employ a jump to light speed. So we get out of the spaceport and boom.
Now the light speed is in 3D also?
Yes, that's in 3D. So that
Cool,
everything is
that
3D.
must look
So
nice.
as believable as it was before, now it just takes it over the top. So you have 2 major destinations that you go to on every single ride, and it's the transitions in between that change as well. So since I was the first one to ride, the jump to light speed, we come out of light speed and we are right in the middle of the battle on Hoth.
But is this shots from Empire Strikes Back, or
No,
is this brand new?
all brand new. As far as I know, nothing has been repurposed. So
And
it's
is
all
it,
brand new photography
is it
and
CGI or stop
all,
motion?
No, it's all CGI.
Okay.
And I just remember at one point yelling out, "Yeah!" when we're on Hoth, because literally you're flying around AT-ATs.
You go underneath an AT-AT at one point.
In 3D.
In 3D.
In 3D.
It was awesome.
Yeah, that must be nice.
it was long too. You're there for like over a minute where you're just flying around and trying to avoid getting shot, and everybody's hooting and hollering, and then at one point you actually crash, and we're kind of trapped on a glacier, and then the glacier breaks free, and we're falling like through the middle of Hoth, like right down into Hoth.
Okay.
So we're just falling, and then somehow I think we get out of it. So you jump to light speed, and now you're at your second destination.
okay.
And a hologram pops up.
En route.
In the ship or on the screen?
On the screen.
Okay.
But it looks like it's right there kind of near you because of the 3D.
3D effect,
And
okay.
that's another variable. So the first ride that we went on, it was Princess Leia, and they repurposed her dialogue, and it says, "Help me, Star Tours, you're my only hope." So that goes away, and now we're in the midst of an asteroid field, because we're still flying fast out of light speed, and then we slow down.
Empire Strike Back-ish?
Yes, very
Okay.
much like Empire Strikes Back. And then all of a sudden, what do we see pop up from behind one of the asteroids? but Slave One. And then the monitor on the right side drops down, and it's Boba Fett addressing us.
Is it Slave One from the old films or the newer films? Is it the green Slave One or the blue Slave One?
It's Boba Fett's Slave One.
The green Empire Strikes Back
exactly.
Slave One. Okay.
So, but it's the Tamor Morrison voice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, as it should be, exactly, because that would make sense if he
Right,
was a
because
clone.
he's a clone. Right, that makes sense.
Right. So again, he exchanges some unpleasantries with us, and then we take off and then start taking fire from Slave One. So I start yelling because we're actually in a firefight with Boba Fett and Slave One, and it was just incredible. So then after that, we meet up with Darth Vader and 2 TIE fighters, and then he's coming after us, and now we're at the Death Star. So we do revisit the Death Star setting, and it's the under construction Death Star.
But is this considered to be the third location for the ride, for your particular version of the ride?
Yes, yes. And I'm pretty sure it's the under construction Death Star. Again, we're down in the trench, and everything's just going like gangbusters, and then we blow it up, get out of there, jump to lightspeed, and now we're back at the spaceport. And then everybody's applauding. But that's all live action. Those people are all live action.
Yeah, absolutely. The vast majority of it is CG. Some of the best CG ILM has ever done. I mean, it is stunning what they did, right? I mean, the reproductions of the images are just unbelievable.
Now, were any of the rides that you, Brian, or you, Brenda, went on differed from what Steve saw? Did you guys get to visit any other areas?
We got to see a lot of the same. My fiance and I rode it 3 or 4 times. The first couple of times we rode it, it started basically with the stormtroopers chasing us out of the spaceport.
Like Steve, okay.
Right. And I don't know whether it happened for you guys, but every time we escaped, there was a Corellian Corvette ahead of us. So basically the Falcon would be ahead of us every single time on our way out.
Okay.
So the Falcon's on its way out. And we would end up inevitably at Hoth. On every single trip that we made, we ended up at Hoth as our first destination, flying underneath the AT-AT. It's a lot of fun, blah, 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 blah. To see Hoth, that dynamic.
It was like a video game.
It really was like a video game. And that was fantastic. And then typically in the middle, we'd get Admiral Akbar, who would inform us that, you have a rebel spy, aboard, and you guys need to protect him, and blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And then we ended up on Naboo.
Oh, that's cool.
So you'd see Jar Jar. You ride over this one air at one point. He's there going, hey, something stupid thing like that. You go underwater. You got that underwater, the whole underwater part of the world. It was very pretty.
City.
Right.
But is that the main action of this setting, the underwater part?
Yeah, there's a lot of underwater action in this
Okay.
one. Like, those creatures that attack the Jedi Knights in the first one.
Yeah.
You see them, and
The
there's a
underwater-
lot of that kind of action going on.
Okay.
The only variables we had was on, our third trip. When the ride starts, you have Vader there with the stormtroopers. Looks like right around the time of New Hope. And Vader sees you, starts coming at you. Your group starts firing at Vader. Vader's deflecting it with his lightsaber and coming at you.
That's a new part of the ride, is that the Star Speeder you're on has firing capabilities. So you can fire on any of the ships.
That we didn't used to have in the past.
Right, so I guess they put combat in the ride now. So you'd have that, you escape. And then in the middle, we had Yoda consulting with us, saying, you must protect, all that silly stuff. But we did not get anywhere near the amount of variation that Steve and Brenda did.
I got 2 rides. The first ride was with my 7-year-old daughter, who had just come off it. So the minute she got off it for her first time, she was ready to go right back on. She loved it so much.
Wow.
And she got on with me, and we got the pod race. And
Oh,
she
cool.
was so
that's
excited
the
that she got the
fifth one
pod race.
we've talked about now.
Yeah.
5 different locations.
In fact, my 4-year-old son was really upset that he missed the pod race.
He had his chance, but he was a little scared of that.
The rebels, that droid on the windshield really
That
spooked
freaked him
him.
out.
So he missed the pod race, so he was very upset. But that was the first one, and then the second one that I went on, we went to Kashyyyk. Our good friends Brian and Rachel were very kind to watch our baby so that we could ride together with the 2 kids. And we got to Kashyyyk, which is funny because Chewbacca is my favorite character. So here we are, we're on Kashyyyk, and there's, you're sitting in a speeder with about 30 people, and all I hear is my husband screaming, yeah! He's more excited.
But it wasn't just that we were on Kashyyyk. We were on speeder bikes chasing other speeder bikes through the forest.
We're not on a speeder bike though, because we're in
No,
the
but
Star
right. I mean, we're in the Star Speeder, but we're chasing them on. They're on speeder bikes,
Like,
like
Return of the
Jedi.
Jedi, like
Yes,
Endor speeder
like
bikes?
Endor, exactly.
Okay.
And it's long. It's going on for like a minute, where we're tooling through
And you're,
the woods.
you're chasing, what, scout troopers or stormtroopers?
Scout troopers, and there are Wookiees everywhere. There's so much going on, and because it's in 3D, you're getting fired upon, and you're firing at people, and then you have Chewbacca actually jumps onto one of the speeder bikes, is fighting one of the scout troopers, and then jumps off of the speeder bike onto our windshield,
Yeah.
and then he finally
Good thing
jumps
Jack
off.
didn't see that. He might have gotten freaked
No,
out.
he did. Jack was with us on this.
So he's
one,
cool with the Wookiees jumping at him. It just doesn't like the robots.
That's right.
Got it.
That's right.
The obvious beauty of the ride is the fact that it, in theory, should be different every time you ride it, unless you ride it, 50, 60, 70 times. Which
Okay,
I'm
but
sure.
you guys just covered about 6 different locations. Are you aware of any other locations that are out there that you guys haven't seen yet?
I know Coruscant's out there.
Oh,
I don't
yeah,
know.
Okay.
I don't know anybody who's been.
Oh, you know what? We did go to Coruscant. I was in that city-like atmosphere from the scene where
from,
Attack
of the Clones.
where Anakin and Obi-Wan are
Coruscant.
flying in that busy street.
Yes, the city,
type
the
thing. That's
nighttime.
where we were
Okay.
as well. Yeah. So the question is, does your ride get chosen by which particular star speeder you get into? Like, how you have a choice of
'Cause
like,
they-
6
what do they have,
different.
like 6?
Yeah, probably
6
like
different
6
entrances?
different entrances. Does that
Or it's
a
just a
factor, or
random-
is it a?
I
luck
would
of the
say,
draw?
because it's completely server-based and random,
Yeah.
that it doesn't matter which one you're in. So you could ride
There
in the
has
same
to be
exact
a certain amount
speeder.
of memory though in each,
As long as they're all the same. As long,
No.
as long as they all have the same capability of being as random as the next one, you step into either one of them and you have the same chance of landing anywhere.
Yeah, the functionality is in the server, not in the speeder itself. So they can just pipe it in to whichever one they want.
But here's my question. Let's say somebody goes in and says, I want, like, let's say you're George Lucas and he wants to go on and say, I want to see the.
Well,
know,
you probably
I'm
need
sure he can.
a special password.
Yeah.
Whoever's controlling it,
type
say
in Tatooine.
right,
and let me
override
have
and
it,
then
you know?
select what you want. I'm sure if you're famous or rich, they'll do that for you.
Or he could sync them all together and they would extend the ride, because again, if it's tied into the visuals, it's tied into the program.
All of a sudden, instead of going to
you
3
could
places,
have-
you can go to 9
You
places.
could go to 9 places if you wanted
something
to,
like that.
and they could just extend the length of the ride.
That's a possibility. So let me ask you something. Overall, compared to what it was and what it is now, is it an improvement? What do you guys think?
Vast improvement. Vast improvement.
It's definitely an improvement, yes.
Is it the combination of the 3D and the new material, or is one more than the other?
That's a very good question. I would say, to me, going to the different locations is top for me. Like,
Okay.
I like the idea that it's going to a different spot every
The
time.
3D is a bonus, kind of.
That's just an extra bonus, yeah.
I would say that the 3D is a bonus, but I mean, for me, I like the original ride, but it was kind of starting to get dated. This completely surpassed my expectations. I give it an 11 out of 10. It was amazing.
Wow. One final quick question. This is probably the first time you guys might have seen anything Star Wars 3D related. Does it make you look forward to the actual 3D releases coming up at all? Or it's just good for Disney, but maybe not for anything beyond?
I have no interest whatsoever in the re-releases in 3D.
I would say that I have no interest in... See, it's tough to say because the prequels are built more for 3D just because there's so much CGI. So it's going to be interesting to see the original trilogy, if they get that far, because I know they're looking to release Phantom Menace first and go in chronological
Right.
order. But I don't know. It's 3D for me is a gimmick. I appreciate it more in a ride setting than I do in an actual film. I mean, unless it's, stuff jumping out at me. But I mean, I don't need to see a film in 3D at all.
I would see Star Wars in a big screen environment anytime they put it in a theater. If every year Star Wars came out and was playing in a theater, I'd probably end up seeing it in the theater every year. What I'm more interested in seeing 3D would be, I have read, I don't know if they're rumors or if they're early Imagineer information about the idea of coming up with how they have a Jedi Academy down in
Yes.
Star Wars, this concept of creating a true Jedi Academy where you would, get your kids selected and they would have lightsabers that would actually illuminate, and that the kids would have like a 3D effect with these lightsabers.
Oh, man.
I don't know if it's a hologram or if it's 3D or whatever, but just the concept of being able to have somebody go in and lift up a lightsaber that lights up, I think would be just great.
Something completely different. Well, I'll tell you something. Even though I haven't seen the ride yet, the idea of a 3D release, I think, for people with children, especially kids like ours who are into this whole Star Wars thing, this gives them the opportunity, probably for the first time, to see a Star Wars film in an actual movie theater.
Right.
Which is a completely different experience. And they get the bonus of 3D that we're kind of a little jaded on. I think they're going to eat it up. The fact that they're watching Star Wars in a gigantic presentation and it being 3D, I think it's the gravy on top of...
But don't you also feel somewhat that they should see it in its true format? You know how, like, when they re-released Star Wars and all of a sudden Jabba the Hutt is there, walking around and... adding these things, like now you're adding a 3D element to it. Like you kind of want to keep it pure and go back to the original.
Yeah, but you know what? The problem is this. Star Wars is never going to be pure like it was because it's been tinkered so much that we're never going to be able to see the original release in a theater presentation. Lucas will not do it. He barely lets you have that on DVD as a bonus disc. So he's already used to the fact that he tinkers and changes it. So as far as expecting it from the person that created it, you're never going to get it. So... I'm fine with the kids having, the only way they can watch this film in a movie theater is through a 3D presentation. I mean, it's better than nothing, I guess. Let's just hope they can do them all.
Well, I just think it's like taking Wizard of Oz and changing that.
Uncolorizing it?
Yeah.
Reversing the colors?
Just, send your kid to the theater to watch Wizard of Oz and in 3D. Like, no, I don't need that.
Cool. Well, I'd like to thank Brian, Steve, and Brenda for taking a little time and letting us know about the Star Tours upgrade. And on behalf of everybody, I would like to thank you for listening to us, and we will see you next time on Geekfest Rants.
Star Tours announces the boarding of the Endor Express, non-stop star speeder service to the moon of Endor. All passengers, please prepare for immediate boarding.
Stop.